Fellow Guyanese, welcome this evening to a special program with Globespan 24/7. Because of the events of yesterday, with the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice, we think it's only wise that we keep our members updated what's going on, our viewers, of the new development as we go on in Guyana. We want to thank Nohar Singh and for making this platform available, of course, and to Devin, our technical specialist, for doing all the live stream for us. Tonight, I have with this evening, well, it's only 5:30. I have with us two special guests, no stranger to us. Sasenarine Singh is the one of the pillars right now in the opposition PVP, and we're hoping that once everything goes as planned, that SACE will be an integral part of the next administration. Of course, also we have Mr. Lenox Shuman. He's the leader of the Liberty and Justice Party. He was supposed to be on our last program, but he went to the hinterland and he couldn't get the connection as was expected. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. How you say it? How's it going?
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, Lenox would not have traded a trip to Murataro for a TV space because it's so much fun and healthy to be in the hinterlands of Guyana. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been on earth, the hinterlands of Guyana. I
know you and Paul went to this beautiful place in Region 4, and that was so beautiful as well.
Myself, Lenox Shuman, and Mr. Basil Bedesi and Jermaine Seeley. They're all members of the PPP, and then Lenox went to guide us on how to navigate the forest.
Okay.
And we met Tushao Loreto Fitco, and so yes, it was a fantastic trip. It gave me a good insight also into what is really going on in the villages, the hinterland villages of Guyana. It's not a pretty picture. Things are tough, but people are trying.
And that's one thing I want to talk about tonight. And I'm glad Lenox is here because when we go on vacation, instead of coming to North America, going to the Caribbean, going to other parts of the world, there are so many beautiful places within our country that I think we need to explore. And I wish I had gone to many more places. I did visit a lot of marine communities when I was there working with forestry, for instance, and other places. You have to go to these areas. But Guyana is so beautiful that I wish other Guyanese would go in and at least live in those nice thatched roofs, huts, and open air, and it's so beautiful. Black water.
They're called houses, Charles, not huts. They're called houses, thatched roof houses.
But they're beautiful. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. Anyway, viewers, tonight we want to pick up on yesterday. After yesterday's ruling of the CCJ, and Sace and Lenox will get into more detail in that, the president of Guyana met with some of his supporters outside of State House. And I don't know if Devin has that tape, but part of his rhetoric or what he said to the people is that every vote must count. He preceded that by telling them that all of you went on March 2nd and voted, and your vote must count. Can we play that, Devin, if you don't mind?
But it means that the matter will now have to go back to the Election Commission. So the matter is not closed. It now has to go back to the Election Commission. So we still have to be patient. I know it's been a long wait. We all went out on the 2nd of March. March passed, April passed, May passed, June passed, and now July. It's the first time this has happened in the history of our country. And it's happened because there's some bad elements out there who try to manipulate the vote by having votes recorded for dead people, people migrated, more votes in a polling station that they hadn't elected. We know all of the faults. And our party, our partnership and our coalition has been bringing these complaints of abuses and irregularities to the attention of the public and also to the attention of the court. But as of today,
that's the I don't quite understand with our president. I don't know, he's supposed to be an intelligent guy, and I'm sure he's intelligent. But when he's talking about forces out there who's causing this problem, he need to look inside, because it's only the PNC is causing this problem. Every other party that actually went to the polls, every international institutions, every single person except the PNC is causing this problem. And it's very disingenuous for the president to say it's dark forces out there. Mr. President, the dark forces are you and the PNC. That's it. And I think we need to really understand that. And that's why, gentlemen, when the last time we had our program, I said, and I'm going to repeat it again tonight, is that this is, well, some people are saying it's terrorism. And I believe if it's terrorism, whether it's political terrorism, whether it's local terrorism, whatever it is, but what this government is practicing now is terrorism. And terrorists has a place in Guantanamo Bay. And we are calling on the US president and the Secretary of State and the ambassador to help us to take these terrorists away from Guyana and put them where they belong. I mean, I can't be as clearer than that. These people are sucking all the oxygen out of our people and of our land. We can't continue like that. Today, they're supposed to meet the Elections Commission. What happened? The PNC commissioners want to read the ruling. I have never heard a clearer ruling than what was given yesterday by President Sanders. When the Court of Appeal ruled, it was so disorganized all the way. Nobody knew what they ruled until they had to put it in writing. Then we understand what they said. Yesterday, the court ruling was so clear as crystal. Yet these lunatics now want to study that to come up with what? I think they're a delaying tactic. They just want to plan the next strategy, and God is watching. There's a man up there watching, and I hope that this will come to an end very, very soon. Gentlemen, sorry I'm reeling off so much, but tell us, Lenox and Says, and our people out there already know what happened, but just recap what happened in the court yesterday. Says your mute is on.
No, I thought you said Lenox and Says. I'm a very logical person, but Lenox, you want to go first?
I want to backtrack a bit, Charles, and I want to address the issue. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, I just see that the video is paused. So I want to backtrack to what Mr. Granger said before anything else. Mr. Granger has proven himself to be a serial liar. He continues to deny the fact that what Mr. Lowenfield did was commit fraud. He continues to deny that what Mr. Claremont Mingo did was fraud. And he continues to peddle lies in the place of facts. We were at the recon session, and there has been nothing of substance, no evidence produced that would say that there were dead people or migrants who voted. And that was further solidified in the CARICOM report, in the report from the OAS, and all of the international observers, even the local observers who were there. GCCI, Private Sector Commission, the Ethnic Relations Commission, all of them were there. And they have all said the very same thing. So what Mr. Granger continues to do is to lie to his supporters. He has done that since March 3rd, and he continues to do that today. So there is absolutely no integrity there. What the court said yesterday was very explicit, and I'm quite surprised, or should I say disappointed, flabbergasted, whatever word you can find, to know that a university professor, Vincent Alexander, has to go home and study something for 24 hours when it was widely circulated in all media forms yesterday evening. He could have acquainted himself with the contents of that ruling because the entire ruling was online. So what the court pretty much said, and I think this has been dissected so many times within the last 24 hours, is that the appeals court has no jurisdiction. Consequently, the ruling that the appeals court made is of no effect. Mr. Lowenfield's report is of no effect. And they've said within the text of their ruling that Mr. Lowenfield has to go back and produce a report as was ordered by the chair of the Guyanese Elections Commission. Now, the fact that we are at this juncture is quite disturbing because, and I saw this on social media already circulating. So far, I've had a few, I'd say upwards of 60 people who would have sent me a document from Mr. Alexander wanting to set aside the entire elections. He's making a case for no declaration. I don't see on what ground he can make that case for no declaration, because the CCJ very explicitly stated that any issues with the elections reside within Article 163, that if there is evidence to be produced or questions about the integrity of the ballots or the electoral process, those things reside under Article 163 of the Constitution of Guyana, and it is for the High Court to adjudicate any such matter.
Thank you.
That is where we are right now, and we simply have to wait. Before I hand over to Says here, I want to say that I have a tremendous amount of respect and confidence in Madam Chair, considering her presentation not only to the appeals court, but the fact that her submission formulated part of the CCJ's ruling. I have no doubt that Madam Chair will do the legal thing, and that legal thing is to declare the results in line with the law, and any aggrieved party would have to go the route of an elections petition.
Thank you, Lenox. And I know Dr. Vishnu Bandu was on the program Monday, and he did also echo the same sentiments that you, that he had so much confidence in the Madam Chair. So we hope that she will do the right thing. Says, we all know the ruling of the court. What next?
Well, it is a very simple process. Actually, from March 2nd to now, actually March 2nd to March 5th, this would have been all over and done with if, save and except we had a man called Mingo. So Mr. Granger yesterday was talking to his supporters, and he said there are dark forces and dark elements who have disturbed these elections. Well, the dark forces are Mingo and Lowenfield, and they are following instructions from Congress Place. So if it wasn't for these Congress Place utensils, then we would have had a smooth conclusion. Mr. Granger said yesterday, every vote must count. And that is exactly what we did in the Otachung Convention Center. And when we went to the Otachung Convention Center, we had results. And the results that we had, which was supervised by CARICOM, which was witnessed, every one of those valid and invalid votes were witnessed and certified and authenticated by GCOM staff and at least 9 other non-GCOM participants from various political parties, local private sector, local observers, the OAS, as well as the European Union. So, and CARICOM, of course. But when those numbers, when those every vote were counted and we established under ROPA, which is the Representation of the People's Act, what is valid and what is invalid votes, we found that every vote, when counted, established the winner of the 2020 elections was the PPPC with 233,336 votes. Second place went to APNU-AFC with 217,920 votes. The mathematical school that I went to, 233 is greater than 219. I don't know if the people in Congress Place went to a different math school, So I don't know what Mr. Granger is talking about. But you're right. This entire operation since March 5th to now is being shepherded by a group of people that operate like sanctimonious gangsters. And there's a chief sanctimonious gangster in Guyana. And he pretends that he's a godly man, but he is a sanctimonious gangster. Because what irregularities is he talking about? I had cause to write about one of these alleged irregularities about the discipline service a couple of weeks ago. And we have established, in fact, that is a bunch of baloney coming out of the PNC and Congress Place. A bunch of nonsense. So there's no invalid votes that has not been captured as yet. The invalid votes have been captured in the recount process, and it clearly established a number. And these are the numbers. The number of the invalid votes captured, it's called rejected votes. And there were only 4,213 of them. Those are all the invalid votes. There's no other invalid votes, no irregularities that can reject any valid votes. We've already captured 460,352 valid votes. And an elections is declared on total valid votes. So what Madam Chair has to call a meeting, and she got to stop pussyfooting on her job. Got to do her job. She has to call a meeting, and she has to consider the total valid votes, and she has to look at the different lists, and she has to say the list with the highest number of total valid votes, meaning the PPPC with 233,336 votes, shall be declared the winner of the elections, and the presidential candidate of that list, His Excellency President-elect Dr. Irfan Ali, is declared as the President of Guyana, of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Then she shall issue instructions for that information to be gazetted, and she shall then invite in the Chancellor of the Judiciary and the candidate who has won the elections.
Okay, sis, that's a good point.
She does the swearing in. And
Okay.
swearing is done by the Chancellor.
RT Sivasankar asked a very good question, a very pertinent question. If Lowingfield, tomorrow the commission is hopefully meeting now. I hope there is no more shenanigans. If Lowingfield doesn't turn up, can the chairman by herself, is any law that we have that will prevent the chairman from declaring the result, knowing what you just said? That is public knowledge that PPP secured 233,336 valid votes. APNU-AFC secured 217,920 valid votes. And of course, the joiner list, 5,000 and odd valid votes. If Lowingfield play this game again and continue to frustrate the commission, can Madam Chair, and Lenox, you can answer this question. I hope none of us are lawyers here, but can Madam Chair, based on Mr. Ramkaran's presentation on Sunday's article, says she has the authority to declare the result? What do we think?
Charles, it's important to remember that the commission is presided over by a former jurist and also an executive chairperson. It is not just the average run-of-the-mill chairperson, it's an executive chairperson. But before I get to that point, I want for the public, the viewing public, to remember that the Constitution of Guyana says that Madam Chair shall declare acting on the advice of the Chief Elections Officer. That advice has already been tendered in the presentation of the matrices coming out of the recount. So the constitutional obligation for Madam Chair has already been met. We already know who won the elections. The only thing that APNU seems to be holding on to is item number 12 or 14 or whatever it is on the order. However, the order in itself has to understand, or the people who are pushing that line, they have to understand that if you have a rogue element, you cannot hold the country hostage in that sense. So the commission under Article 162 of the Constitution once again has to do everything that is reasonable to ensure fairness and impartiality. But I don't know that Mr. Lowenfield and himself is relevant anymore because the winner is already known. The report has already been produced to Madam Chair to determine the winner. So that component is already met. The only thing that is left to do, and Sayes or myself or anyone can do it, it is to now break those numbers down to deal with the seat allocation. The president is already known, or the president-elect is already known. So all of those things are already there. But that being said, Madam Chair, being a previous jurist, like I said, may want to say, look, I don't want anything to come back and haunt me in my work. What I would like to say is that if we have to get rid of the CEO, that we hire someone very quickly to be able to declare these numbers. And that is all that is needed. Yes, you're going to have to meet with the commission and all these things. But once you go through that process, you're going to find Vincent Alexander, Trotman, and Corbyn are going to be absent again. And it will continue that way. They're going to continue to try to frustrate the public, to frustrate the country.
And that's very sad. Sayes, what is your take?
My take is that I want to be guided by, I'm not a lawyer, but I want to be guided by Senior Counsel Ralph Ramkaran in his article in the Sunday papers and in his, they call it, the Sunday article. Bottom line is, he's of the opinion that the Constitution and the laws of Guyana provide an avenue for the Madam Chair to consider all the opinions in front of her and put to vote a position and the recount numbers and proceed. And I tend to agree with what Senior Counsel Ralph Ramkaran is saying.
So we are not even sure what will happen tomorrow. I mean, I know that based on the report that the commission will meet at 1:30. Lowenfield might not turn up. If he doesn't turn up, how can they direct him to submit his report when the report is already known? So do we have to go through that process again, Lenox?
Charles, as I said previously, I don't see where Mr. Lowenfield becomes useful anymore. Look, the reality is Keith Lowenfield has 3 separate criminal charges that have been filed against him. What the CCJ has actually done, and if you read the ruling, there are components in there that says that the CEO unlawfully did a variety of things. So that in itself now becomes part of the evidence that could be used against Keith Lowenfield, since a superior court, the Apex Court of Guyana, has already solidified the fact that Keith Lowenfield did something illegal. So I don't see that an issue would arise where he cannot be dismissed, having known that he acted illegally as determined by the Apex Court of Guyana. But that being said, as I've said earlier and as we started off, I said that I have received a variety of messages, a bunch of messages from people who are saying that Vincent Alexander is trying to make the case for a no declaration. I expect that there will be some heated discussions tomorrow. I don't see how he could go that route because, once again, the CCJ has already determined the route that needs to be taken on that.
Now, let me just read the quote from Mr. Ramkaran's column where he said, and I'm quoting from Ramkaran here, Senior Counsel. He said, Mr. Lowenfield can be summoned and ordered to produce a declaration in accordance with the recount results as ordered in the chairman by her letter of June 13th. If he insists on reporting fake results or manufactured results and not the recount figure, the commission can proceed to issue the declaration under its constitutional power. And he cited where? Article 162 of the Constitution provides as follows, quote, the commission shall issue instructions and take such actions as appear it necessary and expedient to ensure impartiality, fairness, and compliance with the provisions of this Constitution or of any act of Parliament on the part of the person exercising the power or performing duties connected with or relating to the matters aforesaid. And he said there's a precedent where the Commission notionally acted under these same powers, instructed Gokul Budu, a former CEO, in 2015 to change his report, which he had made some mistakes on. Mr. Lowenfield can be instructed to change his report if the Commission found or discover anomalies that were inconsistent with the figures established in the recount process. So there is a precedent and there is a law to back it, and Mr. Lowenfield is acting outside of the law. So yes, there's a couple of things that Mr. Lowenfield is walking on very thin ice. One, he's been insubordinate to the chairman. Two, he refused to carry out a clearly legal instruction. Three, he decided to do his own thing. Four, he ignored the Court of Appeal when it says stay all position for 3 days. He went ahead and acted anyway. So he is clearly operating in the realms of illegality. And I'm glad that private citizens have filed criminal charges against him. And I hope that this is proceeded with quickly, because we need to ensure that criminals are in jail. That is where they belong.
Well, sis,
Charles, let me jump in there for a quick
yeah.
Last week, I wrote the commission on behalf of the Liberty and Justice Party, asking for Mr. Keith Lowenfield to be dismissed from his position. And we cited, I think it was 13 or 14 separate reasons. Some of those were outlined by Sace there. But I think the largest thing is that he has continuously acted outside of his mandate and outside of his remit, the powers that have been given to him as a CEO. He has taken upon himself the court's responsibility to determine the validity of votes, which is a constitutional responsibility that is conferred upon the High Court under Article 163 of the Constitution. So Keith Lowenfield, essentially what he did is to make himself the judge in a matter before it was even heard in a court. So all of those, the very same things that Say said, along with the legal implications of his actions, were all cited in our letter asking for him to be dismissed. Of course, the 3 separate criminal charges formulated part of that appeal to the commission to have him dismissed.
Yeah, thanks, Lenox, for clarifying that. And Says, I know you mentioned Gokul made a mistake. I don't think you're putting it very mildly. I think Gokul was also doing a fraudulent act then, and he was caught. But then, as you rightly said, he was directed by the commission to correct that act. What Lowenfield has proven, not only is he fraudulent, but he's in lock, stock, and he's in the camp of the PNC. He's not an independent person anymore. He has proven that over and over again. So I don't know why we think this guy Lowenfield or Myers or Mingo are independent people. They're absolutely not. We know Gokul was not independent. Well, you know what? You can argue both sides, but in the eyes of the AFC, when he stole a seat from them to give it to the PPP, that was not a mistake, but that was corrected. So the thing is, the Elections Commission have never really had independent persons running that commission. And we're hoping and praying that when all this nonsense is over, that the Elections Commission will finally, well, first they'll disband all the commissioners because they're no good. I mean, these PNC guys are showing the real metal. I'm not saying the PP commissioners are good either, but I think we need to get rid of that commission as is, and really put into place an independent body free of politics. And I just pray that will happen before the next local government election 2 years down the road. Of course, he did mention it's all a delaying tactics, and we all know that. But Terry Sugrim says, and again, we are not lawyers again, Is it that the PNC is now strategizing a policy where Granger can now declare a state of emergency for whatever reason, and this thing is delayed for another couple of months? Do you see that happening? Or I hope yesterday the ABC countries met with the foreign minister Cummings, and I think they told her in no uncertain terms that this is it. If the election commission is not allowed to do their work and pronounce on the winner, there will be sanctions. Sanction is coming. It's at the door waiting to be implemented if this thing go on for much longer. How much longer can we go on like this?
I don't want to dwell in the realms of speculation because Mr. Granger could do many things because under the Constitution, the president has special powers more than many citizens. But he has to weigh the consequences, as the U.S. Secretary of State said. Every action has consequences, and they're dire. In this world, there's one thing I've recognized: a dictator can run only so long. The U.S. arms will get him in the end. Remember Gaddafi? Remember Saddam Hussein? Remember the one from Panama? I can't remember, Noriega. They all were hiding in rat holes in the ground when America was ready for them. So every action has consequences. And believe you me, no amount of money could save them. Remember Saddam had a golden toilet? He had so much money that he could have paid anyone to protect him, yet he was unprotected. Believe you me, the dictator of Guyana will not get away with this. The better thing to do is to respect the will of the people and try again in 2025. But if you want to go down the road of disrespecting the rule of law that the Western Hemisphere is trying to get to, where all the countries of the Western Hemisphere, save and except for Cuba and Venezuela, are following it, then you will be an outlier, and outliers will be dealt with condignly. Bottom line.
Yeah, I think they don't understand that the world has changed. It's not the same time when Barnum was rigging 68 election and 73 election and the referendum and then the election and then Hoyt rigged 85 election. The world has changed now. It's not the same way. Lenox, what do you see happening?
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember Mr. Ramjatan last week said that there will be no sanctions, that these guys are just bluffing. Right now, I think that there are a variety of people who have already had their visas revoked or canceled. Estimates are between 14 and 15. That is unconfirmed. Of course, there are some names that we know openly, but I won't say those. That is not my information to peddle. But it is starting, and that is why you have seen somewhat of a dress down from certain personalities. You've seen a dress down from certain people that are no longer in the public domain, in the public life, peddling these very lies that Mr. Granger uttered yesterday afternoon. I think they are starting to understand at the middle and lower tier that once they go this route, remember, once you are sanctioned, once you have an impediment with a visa, that is on your record for all of your life, especially with one of these foreign nations. They don't just burn records when they change office. That is property of the State Department and the foreign missions, right? So if your visa has been revoked for not supporting democratic norms, that basically means that you have been blacklisted from entering a country where you pose a threat to democracy. And you started off this discussion here, Charles, with terrorism. I quite agree with you that what these guys are doing in Guyana is political terrorism. They're holding the people against their will. They're holding the people hostage, granted in a non-violent means, and that is the only thing that is missing. But that could be debated also when you're looking at their inaction to solve crime and the proliferation of crime right now in Guyana. Then I would say all of the materials are there to support that this here, what we are in, is actually political terrorism by the PNC. I don't see how we could start to step back from that. And the ABCEs would not sanction people if they did not violate some international norm. So the very fact that these folks have been sanctioned, 14 or 15 of them have been already received the first tier of sanctions, it means that the international community recognizes the actions of the PNC for what it is. It is political terrorism, and they are going to be dealt with.
And not thanks, Lenox. But I think not only the United States, but I think Canada will withdraw their visa if they have United Kingdom, the European Union, the Caribbean will don't want to see them in their country. Where will they go? The OACS, the Commonwealth, everybody. These guys gonna be on their own, and I hope they burn in bloody hell to what they're putting Guyana through. This is unpardonable sin, man. I hope Granger visa is revoked. Nagamutu, Harman, Basil Williams, Amna Ali, Valda Lawrence, Lowingfield, Ramjatan, and all these bloody people at the top there who making this country so miserable. And some of these mouthpieces that the PNC have, I hope their visas are also withdrawn and they let them stay in Guyana and burn the rest of their life in hell. Sis, I know we can go on with this all the time, but the fact is that the PNC is now, they've gone rogue. And there's no simple, we can't call spade a spade now. The thing is, the PDP has won this election fair and square. All this thing that they talk about dead people and foreign people and all this crap, it's allegation that has been proven over and over to be false. The thing is, I hope by this weekend that the PDP candidate, Irfan is sworn as president. My question to you, however, says is this. The treasury is dry. Gold reserve is down. Just below $1 billion. It was 12 billion when the PP left office. It's now below $1 billion. Our foreign reserve is less than 2 months of import supplies. Where will the government get the money from to do their program? Because this is, you're taking a country that is really bankrupt. And the sad news is, and I'm not bashing, people of one ethnic group or not, but the PNC has a tradition of bankrupting everything. The PP went in and they restored at least the financial matter of the country became sound then. Now it has gone back to the dogs again. How can you manage a country where you have a big hole in the current account balance at the Bank of Guyana, your gold reserve is down to pittance, your foreign currency reserve is down, there is no import or there's no export because of the COVID virus as well? What is going on? How can you guys manage a country with all these problems ahead of you?
Charles, no, there is no problem that doesn't have a solution. A true leader confronts the major anxiety of its people as they arise. Now, I am not going to stand here and pretend that the economic situation at the point of the no confidence vote was the same as it is today. Two things has caused a great deterioration in the economic situation in Guyana. One, this political, I would call it this political blackmailing and lethargy on the part of Team Granger has caused, they're sucked, as you called it, the oxygen out of the economy. They've driven investor confidence to an all-time low. And then on top of that, since March, we have been hit with COVID-19 and its associated challenges. The reality is, it is a very abnormal situation, but I always keep telling people, Guyana at one point in time had the Great Flood, and we lost 60% of the economy in 3 months. My understanding is that we've lost about 20% of our economy since Christmas to now. So it is not as bad as we thought it was, but it is still bad. The big difference is Mr. Granger's run down all the cash reserves available to any incoming government. But, you know, I believe there's a lot of private sector cash ready to be unleashed, but nobody's going to invest a dime in Guyana until and unless they can see predictable projections for their own businesses, until they can have stability, and stability comes from leadership. Stability comes from a set of policies that will remain consistent, that private sector players can feel that they're not going to be witch hunted, they're not going to be punished, they're not going to be hoodwinked by the administration. And once consistency returns to our financial policy in Guyana, I suspect a lot of capital flight that is happening now will reverse with inward flight coming back to Guyana. So if you take the oil sector out of the economy, there's major capital flight happening in the other sectors. And the only reason we have investments in the oil sector is because people are investing in boats and rigs and all these things. But think about it carefully. That cash doesn't touch Guyana. It just passes through the books, in and out. So it doesn't really have a big impact on the lives of the lady in Lusignan or the man in Dartmouth. It doesn't have a big impact on their lives. But the other sorts of investment that are indigenous to Guyana in the agriculture sector, in the mining sector, those will have a much more direct impact on the lives of the people. So that is the kind of investment we have to start getting back into the game. So, as I said, we want predictability. We want confident leaders who can meet the people, not hide from them like Granger used to do. Meet the people, engage with them, understand their anxiety, and do something about it. And that is the kind of leadership I am convinced in my conviction Dr. Irfan Ali will bring to the table.
But sis, I think for Guyana to really leapfrog, and you know, I'm talking to Dr. Rose here in the US, and he has some really great plans for Guyana as well. And I'm saying to Dr. Rose, and I'm saying it to our audience now and to both of you, is that Guyana need financial capital injection of at least $1 billion to $2 billion US a year. Now, do we have the capacity to handle that kind of investment? At this point in time in Guyana, I don't think we have all the technical, ducks in place to handle those kind of investment. But with Guyanese overseas who have proven themselves, and as I said to one of our program, the Guyanese should not think that their fellow Guyanese overseas is coming to take their job. What I'm saying is that with a capital injection of between $1 to $2 billion US every year for the next 5 years, that will leapfrog Guyana into a middle country, maybe not as go to a first world country, but at least within Dr. Ali's 10 years of office, he can make Guyana almost there to a first world, if not a first world, because one, we need the capital injection and we need the people to get the work done. We have everything it takes to develop our country, but we have to start get it done. And we hope that, and I think Timothy Jonas mentioned it beautiful in last night's program with Salim, is that, this winner take all. And he's right. The thing is, even though the Indian population is only 39% of the total population, the PP do have an edge in the race, which is understandable. But if we reform our electoral laws and people now begin to have a breathing space, knowing that your representative go back maybe to constituent voting, I don't know, so that people can now breathe freely and ensure that that things work well for them. Before you guys come on, I know Elvit George keep mentioning, and he's a very regular person in the program, and he keep reminding us of the killings that was done in the PPP days. And I think I listened to Anil Nandalal this morning when he spoke to Channel 6 in Trinidad, and he's again, the PNC had APNU-AFC had 5 years to investigate all those killings. They never did. The question is why? And a lot of those killings, some of them were criminals. There's no doubt about it. Now, to kill a criminal, is that good or not? I'm not going to make a judgment on that. Some of those killings were accident. Policemen were killed. Different people were shot and killed by gangs and everything else. And they blame all on the PPP. And I think, Elvit, that is very unreasonable to say that. And Cadillac Man, in one of his comments, said that, in 2015, I was Ramjetan guy. To be honest with you, says, and I told you this before, I have never, ever had confidence in Ramjetan. I think he was a lightweight. I had confidence in Moses, but Moses really, really made me feel miserable with his action for the last 5 years. But Guyana can move forward, can we not, Lenox?
Yes, Charles. I want to touch on something that we spoke about pre-elections in our campaign. The kind of cash flow that you're talking about to inject into Guyana requires a massive amount of people to be able to move that. When you talk about infrastructural development and agri and all of these things, it is a tremendous amount. In order to have a stable economy, we need to triple at minimum our population. We're looking close to 3 million people. Right now we're at 780,000 population.
That's a good point, yeah.
So we need to triple our population to be able to absorb that kind of cash to grow our tax base, amongst other things. But before we even get to that point, what we need to do is to ensure that we have a comprehensive immigration plan where people could come and they could be absorbed into the system. We need an integration plan. We also need to recover all of these speculative giveaways that the APNU-AFC has undertaken in the last month to 2 months. They have given away so much of Guyana to their friends and cronies that we need to claw those back into the state's keep so that we could find ways to meaningfully develop them, right? And I think once we start to do that, if we are to look at smuggling gold, for example, roughly $1 billion US a year, and if we start plugging those holes, we are going to find the capital. Oil revenue is starting to come in. We still have the money from the Guyana-Norway agreement. I think that is still there to be utilized. So in terms of the finances, and like Say said, once we start to get into a democratic, predictable norm, then you are going to find people willing to invest. I want to touch on the topic of this killings and all these things. And I had asked Anand Prasad from Stabrook News to send me the article specifically. And they did an expose in 2017 on the very same thing. What Mr. Granger goes wrong and tells people is that 400 young black youth were extrajudicially killed under the PPP administration. What he is attempting to do is to enrage his base and to create a deeper racial divide. He has built this institution that he calls Ministry of Social Cohesion. He has empowered the Ethnic Relations Commission to a certain extent, but yet none of these institutions have been able to hold him to account for inciting race-based violence in Guyana. When you start to talk about 400 black youths were murdered under the PPP's administration, what you have done is racialize criminals. And granted, not all of them were criminals. Some of them died in accidents. And I read the expose done by Stabrook News. So what he has done is completely destroyed racial harmony in Guyana. He has driven a wedge so deep into this nation that the very people that he went out and lied to yesterday, and the people who continue to speak, to ask the very same questions that you read out earlier, that those people now have imprinted in their mind from their leader, David Arthur Granger, that these are the things that happen. It is arguably one of the most irresponsible things that Granger has ever done for Guyana, is to drive that racial wedge so much.
Yeah. Charles, if I may jump in.
Yeah, go on, sis.
Lennox got frozen there.
Sorry, we could go on and have a long discussion about how we could get that done. But I would anticipate that the new administration coming in would be able to address it.
Charles, I just want to jump in by saying Guyana needs all of its people. And we cannot develop this country with no group, no specific group of people. We have to engage and empower all of our people. But I want to agree with Lenox, because I have actually done a very detailed analysis around this fantasy of 400 people being murdered by the PBPC administration. Let us be very, very clear. There was a group called Ocean 11 that operated at the backlands of the east coast of Demerara. These were hardened criminals, and they were running around this country with machine guns, warning people in places like Nomprel, like Mr. Rashid. And the point is, the evidence clearly established that these criminals destroyed a lot of people, and Mr. Granger was counting those good citizens as people that the PPP terminated. He is clearly not being truthful to this nation, and it is quite unfortunate, because a leader ought to lead. A leader ought to be telling the nation and guiding the nation like a father, not driving a wedge to divide our people and to make us feel that we're inferior in our own country. And the other thing is, you know, Mr. Granger said yesterday, he knows the faults, and I'm quoting, but what he knows the faults of the elections, but faults, administrative faults, are not fraud. Clearly, Charles, I want to make this absolutely clear, and I think Lenox saw this, because I saw this with my own eye. In the room was the APNU, the PBP, and all the other parties. The CARICOM people were there occasionally, when they can be. The private sector was always there, the local observers. These people were lifting a ballot by ballot, determine what was valid and what was not valid. What was not valid was invalidated in accordance with the ROPA, the Representation of the People's Act. So at that stage, in that room, the PNC and the PPP, APNU-AFC, all the other parties, the local private sector, they all agreed on what was valid and what was not valid. What was valid is expected. So, as the CJ said yesterday, that process was done then, and that process doesn't belong at Mr. Lowenfield's desk. It was done in that room, the counting room. So, but yet Mr. Granger continues to peddle this fantasy that, oh, there's a lot of invalid and rejected and fraudulent votes out there. It is all rubbish, and it exhibits an attitude of a hypocrite who's vested in their own self and is into games, and that person is willing to destroy people's lives so that they as an individual can survive. That is selfish. That is extremely selfish.
I know, guys. I know we're running out of time because we're running out of time. Sorry, Lenox, we're running out of time because after our program, Globespan will have a religious program coming on to pray for Guyana, and I pray that some of you who are watching now will stay on to watch that program, pray with our religious community, because Guyana needs a lot of prayer. Before you come on, Lenox, and give your closing statement, a lot of our comments online is telling us that what has happened in Guyana for the last 20, 30, 40 years is that foreigners coming in, pretending they care about us, but they don't care a hoot about us. All they want is to rape our resource and then go away with it. Omai did it to us, Barama did it to us, everyone is doing it to us. The bauxite industry doing it to us. And what I'm saying, and I know Larch is saying that if we have a capital injection in Guyana, there'll be a lot of thieving going on, a lot of stealing. But on says that is a professional accountant. I am an accountant too. Many accountants know about setting up established procedures and controls so that if anything go wrong, you can do it immediately. That's why you need internal auditors, strong audit team. As soon as you pick up a problem, you immediately report to the board and that issue is dealt with. So we can correct all those things. But gentlemen, in the next 5 minutes we have to leave. Tell us, Lenox, what is your view of what has happened tomorrow as we close up? When will the new president be sworn in? And from then we'll have to move on.
All right. Charles, you touched on something very interesting. And I want to think that when Mr. Granger goes to the altar, his prayer starts off something like this. Forgive me, Father, for all of the lies that I'm going to tell my people today. And then he goes on to list them out before he asks for forgiveness. I can't see that he's going to go and bend the knee at an altar asking for forgiveness for the things that he would have done. So there is a clear intent in what Granger does. So I hope that some of those prayers are for Granger to maybe regain some degree of integrity. It would be a sin for the People's Progressive Party Civic to go into office and think that they could conduct themselves the way they did in the last 23 years, or at least let's say the 23 years of their leadership of the country, their tenure. That being said, in terms of the financial checks and the accounting mechanism, the accountable mechanism needs to be very robust. A nation is only as strong as its institutions. And those institutions need to be strengthened, they need to be empowered, and they need a certain degree of autonomy. There should be no minister calling down to any single person, any statutory officer or otherwise, dictating to them how to go about doing their business. What we need is a transformation into a meritocracy. And when we get that done and we start to put the right accounting framework in place, it now becomes really difficult for anyone to steal. But once again, it has to be coming from the willingness of the People's Progressive Party Civic to be able to undertake what needs to be done to ensure that this system that they're finding right now does not operate in the next 2 or 3 years. What I would like to ask our viewers is to be patient a little bit more. I know I continue to ask for patience. I continue to ask for people to have a little bit of hope. But I think that as it unfolds, Madam Chair is going to make a decision that is in line with the laws. Being a previous jurist, she is going to ensure that the people are not denied their franchise. I want to ensure that our people in Guyana and in the diaspora understand that very explicitly. Tomorrow, what we are anticipating is that maybe Alexander and Corbyn or one of them may not show up, or maybe 2 of them may not show up. Lowenfield may not present his report, and thus it pushes the meeting now another 24 hours within which they don't need quorum and they could just go through and do what they need to do. I would say that that is no longer relevant because they had already, the Guyana Elections Commission has already had its first meeting at which there wasn't quorum. So the next meeting that they call, if there is or isn't quorum, is inconsequential because if only the PPPC's commissioners are there, they would have met the legal requirements for a meeting, and thus they could just make a declaration and move forward. You're on mute, Charles.
Right. In my closing statement, I just want to say it is time to bring an end to this system of sanctimonious gangsterism that has been operating in Guyana since the passage of the no confidence vote. It is designed only on trickery, and I am saying to the Pharaoh of Guyana, let the people get on with their lives. I want to look forward, so I am not going to dwell too much. I am confident that the Madam Chair will do her job and declare a result and get a president of Guyana sworn in, because there's no legal recourse anymore. They've exhausted all of it. And I want to look forward. So the fundamentals of what I want to look forward to is the fundamentals of human development. And I want to focus on a future government which recognizes that Guyana needs all of its people. A future government where the budget and the resources of the state are put to work fairly for all of the people, not some of the people all of the time. I want to look forward to a government that is prepared to sign on to a social contract with the people, to ensure there is adequate support mechanisms in place to improve the people's productivity, their output, their personal wealth, if they're so willing to work smarter and harder and unleash their potential. I'm looking forward to a government that is willing to embrace the private sector as the engine of growth and to unleash that potential that they can bring to the table. I'm looking forward to a government that will foster a society that empowers our institutions to make them more independent and more people service oriented, so that it can lift these institutions like the police and the financial services and all the other institutions can help. The University of Guyana can work towards helping, lifting, and empowering our people every day in a very systematic way, within the rule of law, of course. And I am making a formal call to the PNC, because at the end of the day, the PNC is the man in the house in the coalition. Or I shouldn't say that, maybe the adult in the house in the coalition. If the PNC is prepared to follow the rule of law, then they can be engaged to serve a useful role. But they have to learn and relearn the process of following the rule of law and respecting the basic human rights of all of our Guyanese people. We cannot ignore that 47% of Guyana voted for the PNC, and thus we have to engage with the 40% and embrace them as brothers to form that bond so that we can build Guyana. But also, a good opposition is always needed in a country to keep a government on their toes so that they can conduct the people's business in a transparent manner. So I am calling on the PNC, let's stop all this infantile ranting and raving that I see happening every night on the APNU channel. Stop parroting idle and empty messages. Stop all this sloganeering. All it is doing is dividing our people, destroying our nation, and demolishing a wonderful country. Wake up, grow up, and come to the table after the president has been declared and engage. Let us engage all, and let's put the resources of this country to work. And that is all I can pray for, but you know, it's a prayer, and let's hope that the PNC-led APNU-AFC are listening and is prepared to do good by the people of Guyana.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, I think, Charles, we have lost Charles there.
Yes,
I just want to say thanks to all the viewers, thanks to Devin, and thanks to Nohar, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nohar and Devin, and have a good night.
Thank you all. Have a good night.